if the Voting Rights Act isn't renewed in 2031. People don't realize how, like connected all of this is. Like the tax on the Department of Education, ensuring that our kids do not have the fundamental rights to literacy, to be able to learn how to read or write and become educated populace. Like that is really the crux of this fight. We need to pass the Voting Rights Act, John Lewis Voting Rights Act, and because we have to pass that piece of legislation, it'll be historic, to codifying the law, the protections to ensure that our democracy can still exist.
I'm joined now by State Representative from Michigan's 11th District, Donovan McKinney, who is also running for U.S. Congress in Michigan's 13th District against Sri Thander, a pretty wild candidate or wild incumbent that we'll talk more about in just a minute. The short version, he's extraordinarily wealthy to the tunes of being able to spend $20 million on his own campaign. And Donovan's running a remarkable campaign, the kind of campaign that we want folks to run when they want to represent us. Donovan is someone that I've gotten to know over some time now, and I'm extraordinarily impressed with his presence, with the work he's doing on the ground. And he's one of the folks that I can say honestly walks the walk. And so if you're listening and you want to support a candidate for Congress, check him out, Michigan's 13th District. But Donovan, it's great to have you here. I know during the campaign it can always be hectic. Thanks for having a few minutes with us today.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. I'm just so glad to be on with you. And, we met just a few weeks ago and hit it off, and just proud of your legacy, what you continue to do, and like your fight for human rights and so much other things. So just appreciate you for even having people like me on this platform.
Absolutely. I mean, what's the point of having a large platform if you're not going to elevate good people? And I was joking about this. We're talking about divine providence. You and I had our first conversation, and as soon as I hung up the phone, I get an email from an angry reader saying, you say you're here to elevate good voices, but why haven't you talked to Donovan McKinney yet? And I'm like, wow, the timing is impeccable. I responded, you should know that stay tuned, because I literally just got off the phone with him. And then they responded apologizing for being angry because they respect you so much and they're frustrated that you're not getting the attention you deserve. I'm like, we're going to change that. We're going to change that.
Oh, man, I appreciate, your listeners and other people who are just, want us to get the attention necessary. This is a serious race. Yeah. And I know we're going to be talking more about it, a little later, but it's serious, and we're going against a multimillionaire who just doesn't care about the district at all.
Yeah, and I think it's that corporate corruption, that influence of this absurd wealth that's really devastated our democracy, our republic. And you made a comment to me last time we were speaking offline that stuck with me. And as an attorney, I knew this to be true, but I never heard it put so succinctly and so powerfully and really devastatingly. You made a comment about black people in the 14th Amendment. And I could repeat it, but I'd rather you repeat it because I think it just sounds so much better coming from you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And so this is really something near and dear to my heart. I talk to a lot of constituents about it today, and a lot of community members, and just connecting the dots. That's, I believe, our true role as elected officials, to educate our populace and people we love and represent. At the end of the day, what's going on with the Supreme Court ruling and allowing the 14th Amendment to get rolled back, essentially what that does is target not only our migrant immigrant communities, our brown sisters and brothers, but it actually impacts a lot of the time black people in this country. And we have a dark history here in the United States, and the fight for voting rights, or you want to say voting privileges, or just to be able to get our civil rights, just to be able to get recognized in this country as a people. And a lot of times people don't realize how that history plays into today. So I talk about the 14th Amendment and how, in terms of black people, we're still in the U.S. Constitution. It is still black and white on the books It's just unenforceable currently because of the 14th Amendment, but we're still 3/5 of a human being. And it hurts to even talk about this because we're on the verge of going back down that same road. We're on the verge of going back to chattel slavery and black folks just not having any rights at all, going back to the dark days of probably the biggest sin America's ever committed, which was slavery. At the end of the day, if the 14th Amendment gets rolled back, what do we do in terms of black people? What do we do in terms of black elected officials?
Mm-hmm.
And then it ties into the Voting Rights Act and how black Americans were the only group of people in this country that have to get our Voting Rights Act renewed, our voting rights privileges, so to speak, renewed every single 25 years. And so the last time it was renewed was under, I call him Baby Bush, under President Bush, back in 2006. Yeah. And every single Republican voted for it. And then 25 years from 2006 is what? 2031, which is just around the corner. It's coming up pretty quickly. And I think what I've read was every single Republican has been surveyed talking about would you renew the Voting Rights Act if it was up for a vote today. And I believe almost all of them, if not all of them, voted or surveyed and responded no.
Well, I would go a step further, Donovan, that it wasn't just that they were surveyed. I mean, you're exactly right, they have been. But remember, under President Biden, we tried to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, which is effectively a renewal of the 2006 renewal of the Voting Rights Act, and Republicans unanimously voted against it. And I want listeners to keep in mind, this is not accidental. In 2006, the Voting Rights Act renewal further expanded voting rights and voting access. And then for the first time in American history, something remarkable happened. You had a higher black voter turnout than white voter turnout. And we elected our first black president. We took the House. We got near supermajority in the Senate in 2008. And then suddenly, whoa, slow down a second. Hold on a second. We can't have a black guy in the White House. We can't have this, uniparty control. Absolutely not. Now we're going to start to steal Supreme Court seats. Now we're going to start to, file lawsuits and have Shelby versus Holder passed and, file that lawsuit and win with this right-wing Supreme Court. And most folks don't realize this. When you talk about a return to chattel slavery, a return to Jim Crow America, some people might think, well, he's just being bombastic. And I'm here to tell you, no, Representative McKinney's not being bombastic. He's being deliberate and specific and precise, because if you look at the data already, since Shelby versus Holder, and I don't know if you knew this or not, but this is a data point that kind of shook me to my core. Since Shelby versus Holder was passed, at the time there were about 210,000 polling locations throughout the country. In that time, a decade ago to now, those 210,000 polling locations are now down to about 90,000 polling locations. Wow. When you are cutting down more than 50% of the polling locations, and then when you do a deeper analysis, you find something even more shocking and frightening. The majority of those polling locations are shut down where? In white majority neighborhoods? No. In black and Latino majority communities. Because guess what? America is still a very highly segregated society due to the legacy of Jim Crow and redlining and these segregationist schools and policies. And so now you are shutting down polling access. And this is the part, and I want to get your thoughts on this. This is the part that I think folks need to understand. That white supremacy today, and this is something that Dr. Michelle Alexander talks about in the New Jim Crow, Dr. Ibram Kendi talks about in Stamped from the Beginning. The white supremacy today is not just a KKK terrorist wearing a hood, although that's very much still here.
Yeah.
It's these subtleties to say this town has 80% black people, we're going to cut down the polling locations by 50%. This town has 90% white people, we're going to increase the polling locations by 50%. And all you need to do is get to that 51% mark. And so it's not a matter of just saying black people can't vote anymore. It's a matter of saying we're going to cut down the ability of black people to vote just a couple of percent, and then we're going to gerrymander the hell out of the rest of it. Your thoughts on that?
To your point, I completely agree. That's the fear. But more than likely, what's going to happen is if the Voting Rights Act isn't renewed in 2031, what that allows states to do, not just gerrymander districts, but allow to implement, voter suppressing tactics, just like poll taxes or literacy tests. Tools that are utilized to prevent black and brown people from voting, and the tax on education. People don't realize how, connected all of this is. Like the tax on the Department of Education, ensuring that our kids do not have the fundamental rights to literacy, to be able to learn how to read or write, and become educated populace. Like that is really the crux of this fight. And we need to pass the Voting Rights Act, John Lewis Voting Rights Act, and that's why I'm running for Congress, because we have to pass that piece of legislation. It would be historic, to codifying the law. What's really the protections to ensure that our democracy can still exist. But then, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say one of the things about your campaign that's really impressed me is even though you're facing an opponent who is worth, I don't know, hundreds of millions of dollars, he spent absurd amounts of money on campaigns, more money than most Americans can even conceive of. And if I heard you correctly, he's told you directly he's going to spend $20 million of his own money on this campaign, and is still taking corporate money. But you're sticking to your principles. You're saying, nope, I'm not going to fight that battle of corrupt corporate money. And I know you've had corporations and PACs reach out to you to say, hey, we're going to support you if you compromise your principles, and you fought back and said, no, I'm going to stick to this. The upshot, though, Donovan, is you are choosing a much more difficult battle. Why, and just to be very blunt, play the cynic, why are you choosing such a more difficult battle when it's so much easier just to compromise a couple of things here and there so you can get elected?
Yeah, so it's the reason why, because this is bigger than me. Like, this is about representation, but more importantly, this is about providing hope and empowering others to realize their voice and how to utilize it in the correct way. So it's all about the inside-outside strategy, right? You need people on the inside of government who are going to do the will of the people, but you need people to be able to organize themselves and come together and fight for what's right and put pressure on their elected officials. And so, I've been the type of person that, even though I'm a Democrat, even though, I'm supported by, various institutions like, unions and things of that nature, like we have to understand that if it's not about people, then why in the hell are we doing this in the first place? Yeah. And so, people they're so apathetic, and I understand why, because when we get good people elected, sometimes the system itself is so hard to attack and really try to change for the better. And so we need to get more people elected. We need to get money, especially big money, corporate money, out of politics. And we need to make sure that our elected officials do not have their hands tied behind their backs when they're out here fighting for us. At the end of the day, follow the money trail. And so I wanted my money trail to be from the people, of the people, and not necessarily dealing with these, mass corporations and, their special interests. So, that's why we're doing it this way, because, for my children, I don't know if you know this, brother, but I don't know if your viewers know, but I have, a wife and two baby boys, 3 and 1, and then we have a baby girl on the way. And I want to be able to look at them in their faces as they grow up and say, your dad did everything possible to not only change your life, but change our community's life and future generations coming up after us. So we have to lead by example.
I tell you, I mean, that's it's the old saying, right? That we don't own this planet, we borrow it from our children. And that's really the mentality that I think we need to have. And look, I understand all the stresses that somebody running for office goes through. I understand all the stresses somebody who is in office goes through, because it's easy to take a hit from that golden spoon and be like, okay, I'm set now. But you really are compromising your morals. And to echo your really important point, it's bigger than you. You're setting the society you represent on a trajectory that unfortunately has gotten to us, where we are today. And if you're just tuning in, we're speaking with Donovan McKinney, running for Congress in the 13th Congressional District of Michigan, a deep blue seat. This is not a seat that's going to flip red at any time in the foreseeable future, in the next couple of decades. This is a deep blue seat. And this is why I don't buy the whole vote blue no matter who crap. We need to vote for the best person possible, the person who's going to represent working families, especially at a time when wealth and income inequality is the worst that it's been since the Great Depression, especially at a time where 1 in 6 Americans are food insecure, 1 in 9 children are food insecure. True living wages are lower than they've ever been. It's an outrage, an absolute outrage. Now, your district is unique because, if I understand, it's one of the 2 or 3 black majority districts not represented by a black member of Congress. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's one of 2 seats, the Michigan 13th district. That's a majority black seat. Like you said, it's not represented by a black person. The other seat, I believe, is in Tennessee. And so, like our current congressman, the way he wins is he utilizes his money to pay other folks to get in the race. And then there's so many people, they pack the race and then they split the vote. And then because he has a competitive advantage on the money side, he's able to edge out the competition and win. This time is going to be a little different. I'm hearing from folks who would typically try to run for this seat, who have called me and saying, no, we're lending our support to you. I think
Amazing.
This district is fed up with the current congressman because he's only a congressman via billboards. He has utilized his office allotment that every congressional member gets, our taxpayer dollars, to serve their constituents. He's utilized that and take advantage of the system. So the average congressional member spends about 5% of their office allotment on promotional materials. So billboards, mailers, promote what the office can do. Our current congressman has spent literally almost 10 times that. Literally, I think it's above 50%, half of his entire congressional budget on just promotional materials. And then he doesn't have the staff necessary because he doesn't have the money to hire enough staff to back up the resources that he's promoting. And so when people call the office, they can't get through. Or they need help, people losing health care, they're losing food assistance. I got folks right now, I just had to talk a couple of constituents off the ledge because they just lost their jobs. They don't know what the hell they're going to do. And so, they have to know, people have to realize that who you elect has a tremendous impact on your day-to-day life, whether you realize it or not. And we cannot waste any seat, Democrat or Republican. We have to continue to get the best people in office who are going to do it the right way and who aren't going to put corporate interests over communities, who aren't going to put fascism over families, who are going to put profits over people. And that's what we're here to do.
This is really where it comes down to on the actual vote aspect. It goes back to the whole conversation about voting rights and voting access in general. Every poll I've ever seen shows that no matter how divided you might think this country is, on certain issues we're extraordinarily united. On getting corporate money out of politics, more than 90% of Americans across the political spectrum, we're talking far left, far right, hardcore centrists, they all agree, let's get corporate money out of politics. On foreign lobbies, which I think AIPAC should be registered as a foreign lobby, nobody wants these lobbies to influence politics because these lobbyists tend to have their own personal interests that have nothing to do with working people and will influence members of Congress and in ways that are not beneficial. And I don't just mean AIPAC, I mean the big oil lobby, healthcare lobby. We've seen the outrage at United Health for the horrific lack of healthcare they've provided.
Yeah.
Where I want to get your thoughts on, Donovan, is how do we reconcile the fact that people despise these corporate contributions, despise these lobbies, yet we still are stuck at a 40% turnout for voting. 90% say, yeah, I would vote for a candidate who is 100% people funded over a person who is corporate funded. But then when it comes time to vote, 40% actually come out and vote. What do you account that 50% disparity to?
Well, I count it towards both parties and just the system entirely not doing what they need to do on behalf of people. And what I think the best example would be the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, where we have for the first time, I think in history, where we had two black men in the U.S. Senate negotiating this particular legislation at the heels of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and so many others who've been murdered by the police in this country and law enforcement. And, we're not knocking law enforcement. In reality, there's people in my community who feel that we need law enforcement. And yes, I would say that we do. But in reality, what's going on is we have too many people who take advantage of the badge and not being held accountable for their actions.
Yeah.
And so what's going on is they had a particular deal. And I remember talking to Senator Booker when he came to Detroit, advocating to get Democrats elected. And he told me this story on how him and Tim Scott, who's a Republican, they were coming together to try to figure out how to negotiate and bring this bill to light and pass it through the United States Senate. And then what happened was special interests.
Yep.
I think it was the sheriff's union, police union, and all this stuff got involved and just killed essentially Tim. That's what I heard that Senator Scott walked away from the negotiating table, and that was it. We couldn't get a deal done. And, people at that particular time, it was COVID. It was a lot of crazy stuff going on. But, that Black Lives Matter movement spurred from that, everybody was ready. And then we got let down by the system because, special interests really took hold. And, that's why people are so apathetic, because they're even though you all have the best intentions as elected officials, even though we might elect a good person and once in a while we might win a seat, the whole entire system needs to be changed. And, that's why folks don't necessarily believe in us. They don't believe in government. That's why, our polling in terms of the favorability of Democrats, Republicans, Trump himself, everybody's polling low. Because nobody thinks the system can work for them. And so we have to do our due diligence and change it. But it has to come from the outside as well as the inside together.
Yeah.
And that's really my focus, is to build this movement to recognize that, hey, you all have the power, whether you realize it or not.
And this is why I say to voters that two things are true to me. Your righteous anger is justified, and can't anybody say that it's not. It's justified. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. In addition to being justified, we have ways to move forward to address that anger in a meaningful way. And that is to elect people like you, Donovan, people who are going to be accountable and who have a track record of showing accountability in the work that you've done, not just over the last 1 or 2 years, but over the last several decades. And if we are going to change the face of this society to one that is attuned to justice, then we need to elect the people who have been doing the work and who have been accountable. And that's where I say to voters, whether you're in the 13th District of Michigan, or whether you're sitting in Texas or Florida or New York or California or Illinois, this is a person that you should contribute to, because a federal seat is going to affect you one way or another. This horrific bill that just passed, that guts Medicaid for 17 million people, that creates this ICE fascist army with $37.5 billion in funding, it passed by 1 or 2 votes in the House. It passed by 1 vote in the Senate. And on these federal seats, it's that much more important. And what we're seeing now is the attempt by Republicans to again cheat. We're seeing the Texas state legislature try to redistrict mid-session or mid-decade and add 5 new Republican seats to Texas U.S. House to try to prevent Trump from losing the House come midterms. Talk a little bit about that, and because I think folks may not fully understand what gerrymandering is. Some might, some might not. But let's talk a little bit about that and what we can do to fight back against that.
Yeah, so this mid-century redistricting that is going on, it's very rare that it has happened in this country. It has happened, but very rare occurrence. And what's going on is that President Trump and his cronies and the MAGA Republicans, they're trying to find some way to get through the midterm elections next year. Praying to God there will be elections. I'm asking all your viewers to just keep fighting, keep holding our elected officials accountable, and ensure that we have another fighting day. But what's going on is they know that the big shitty bill, I call it the big shitty bill that they just passed,
Accurate.
Are going to have such a detrimental impact, not only on black and brown people, urban communities, but white America. Whether you realize it or not, white America are going to have such they're going to be so mad, and a lot of them already are. I'm getting calls from a bunch of Republicans right now who straight up told me they're having buyer's remorse. They were like, we did not know Trump was going to do all of this, even though he campaigned on the same things he's doing to dismantle the fabric of America. It is just unbelievable. But, I don't necessarily blame them. I think they got hoodwinked. And now they're realizing, oh my God, we let a monster in again, the second time. So we have to figure out ways to get them on our side and realize, hey, you know what? Our voice, our vote matters. And Trump knows that. That's why they're trying to figure out ways to do voter suppression. This is not just about voter ID anymore. That's old and done. That was a fight 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Now it's about citizenship. And people do not realize this. They're going to figure out ways in order for you to vote, create rules where you have to show your birth certificate. Your name has to match where you were born. So if you got married or if you change your gender or whatever it may be, change your name, then that you won't be able, you're probably going to be barred from voting. These are the type of things that, Trump and his cronies are trying to figure out because they got Project 2026. And they're literally following it to a T. So what are we going to do in terms of fighting back, stepping up on the Democratic version of where's our project 2027, 2028, 30? We have to start thinking and playing chess instead of figuring out ways to respond to Trump. Let's figure out ways to be on the offense. Right. And that's really what I'm trying to bring to the table as a youthful voice and one who can think critically, but also bring other people to the centerfold.
And Donovan, one of the frustrations I think with the Democratic Party right now, why it has a 26% approval rating, lowest in 30 years, is a point that you just made, that so often the party's reactive. And so often when given the opportunity to elect new youthful voices to leadership positions, they do the exact opposite. Rather than electing, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to the House Oversight Committee, they elected Jerry Connolly, who, look, God rest his soul. I don't want to speak ill of the dead, but this is more of a procedural question. That how are you going to put an old white guy who's dying of cancer into one of the most powerful positions when you have the next generation right there? And this is not a knock on Connolly, it's a knock on a system that prioritizes that seniority over long-term success of the party and of the country. Even now, we're talking about, Chuck Schumer wants the Senate candidate to challenge Suzanne Collins, is a former governor who, God love her, but she's 77, and if she wins, she'll be 85 at the end of her first term. How is that building long-term success? And now, we see youthful voices like you. What are you, 35, 34? I can't tell.
33.
33. I can't
I'll
tell.
be the youngest, once elected, I'll be the youngest person of color ever elected to Congress in Michigan's history.
There we go.
Yeah.
I just have something. I really can't tell how old black people are. It's just I have no way of knowing.
Hey, listen, my grandmother always said, I don't know if you know the saying "black don't crack," but
I,
my grandmother always says, "Good black don't crack." You have to believe in the Lord, and
there
then
you go. I love it.
your
I,
skin is just gonna glow. It's that
I
melanin.
remember first when I was running for office, I'm knocking doors, and you know how on the little app it tells you the name and the age of the person, and so it's like it's this woman who this is like 94 years old, and I'm like, oh man, I feel bad knocking because I'm gonna make her get up and come all, and this youthful woman who might be 60 comes to the door, and I'm like, is your mom home? Like I don't know what else to say. And she goes, I hope not. She's been dead for 20 years. I'm like, I'm like, okay, so you must be. And she goes, yeah. And then she said that phrase. She goes, son, don't you know the old saying, black don't. I'm like, I'm
Yeah,
seeing it
yeah,
firsthand right
yeah.
now. Okay. So at that point, I'm like, I'm just gonna stop guessing and just start asking and just throw myself at the mercy of the person I'm speaking with. But yeah, you're 33 years old, and you've got decades already of amazing leadership. What is your message to folks who are thinking about sitting out and saying, you know what, whether I vote for Donovan or not, maybe it doesn't even matter. But what's your message to them to let them know that a vote for you is a vote for working families, is a vote for democracy, is a vote for compassion and humanity, all things that are missing in politics right now?
I would say we as a people, and especially to my young folks out there who are so apathetic, who just don't believe the system can work. We need you, whether you realize it or not. Decisions are being made for all of us every single day. I like the late great Shirley Chisholm. She always said, you're either at the table or on the menu, and so because of our lack of faith in the system, which I understand, like the system sucks, but it can be changed. Like it has. There were some wins that have happened in the past when we come together. The goal is to make you think that this system can't change at all, to make you think that your voice doesn't matter. And while they're spending so much money to do voter suppression and so much time and energy and organization around it, and it's because they literally do not want you to show up to the polls and vote.
Right.
Voting is not the end all be all, but it's a tool, and it's a tool that we have to utilize every single year, not just in state and federal elections. I'm talking about your local elections too. That has a deference on your lifestyle and on your livelihood, and people who are controlling how we fund infrastructure, how we fund our schools, healthcare, all of this stuff. Like it can change if you get the right people in office. And I've seen it. I've seen it happen, but also seen it happen the other way where, people don't come out and we lose good people. And then those good people that we have lost don't get engaged anymore. They like stay out the system, and then the system becomes worse and more tainted. So we just need more people with a heart who care about others, who are going to put the community above themselves and realize this is bigger than all of us. But please do not lose hope. Like stay in it. Like we need your voice. We need you. And like I'm a living testimony. Like the reason why I'm doing this, I wasn't even going to say this, but I took a major pay cut running for a state rep seat. Like literally, I was a multi six-figure dude working for a think tank doing environmental justice policy. That's my background. That's my degree. I was living my life, bought a house, was helping my family. I'm first generation college student, but I made that sacrifice to become a state rep on a public service salary, knowing that my family will suffer for it. But because I realized long term, this is bigger than me. Like I want to leave a dent and a legacy in my community that's going to help people. I want folks who come up to me, lift their head up, not with their head down, and literally tell them, hey, you got real leadership in here fighting for you, but we need you to fight for yourselves too. And we're in this thing together. And that's why this is a movement. This is not just about a campaign. This is a movement. That's the difference between, working at the now versus looking at this long term. And so, that's a long-winded answer saying we need your voice. We need
It's a
you.
beautiful answer. We need your voice. State Rep Donovan McKinney running for Congress in Michigan's 13th Congressional District. Last thing before you go, you really beautifully made the case that we need you. We need you involved, we need you engaged. Now, some folks are able to contribute financially, and for those who can, you can contribute $1 up to the max of $3,500. For some folks, contributing financially is not an option, and I respect that, and I want to honor that. However, they have time that they can contribute. How can folks contribute financially, and how can they contribute with their time to help you win this election on this promise? And anyone listening knows that I don't bring folks on here who I don't believe will follow the promises. I believe Donovan McKinney will be accountable to us. How can folks be part of your campaign, part of your movement, to help you get elected and ensure that we have meaningful representation in the halls of Congress?
Absolutely. And I like to always say, whatever you can lend in terms of your time, talent, and treasure, the three T's. So you can go to donovanforcongress.com. So DONAVAN for Congress, FOR Congress.com. You can sign up to volunteer. Literally, as soon as you go on the homepage, you can click to chip in, become a founding donor. We literally just kicked off our campaign. I think it was May 1st, and now it's the end of July. We have over 8,000 individual contributions.
Amazing.
To the campaign. The average donation is $35. This is truly a people power campaign. We need everybody to realize how important this seat is, because this is going against the oligarchy. This is going against fascism and people who continuously put themselves over the people they represent. And we're not going to do that. So whatever you guys can do, everybody, I don't care, if you can just make a couple hours on phone calls, we need you. That's the only way we're going to be able to win this seat. And, other people need you, but our district needs you. Our country needs you. And you're going to get somebody that's going to fight like hell for you. And we're going to show up every step of the way. And I'm just forever grateful, my brother, for this platform, for this time. And grateful for your listeners, too, because I'm nothing without the people. I tell folks I'm nothing without God. And I'm nothing without the people.
Amen. I love that, brother. We'll have you back on soon. And this is a platform that's available to you at any time, because that's the only way we're going to get through this together.
Yeah, we're going to do a part 2, man. I told you that earlier. We're going to do a part
Absolutely.
2. I'm excited about it, and just forever grateful. And thank you again, seriously.
Donovan McKinney for Congress in Michigan's 13th Congressional District. Make sure you check out his website at donovanforcongress.com.